Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
If you step back over the last 18 months, federal contracting doesn't look quite the same. Risk is moving, access is tightening, and the expectations on contractors are a lot higher than they used to be. Barbara Kinosky, managing partner at Center Law and Consulting, has been tracking those changes, and when she puts them together, they tell a pretty coherent story about where this market is headed. Barbara, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
The last 18 months have been full of changes from the federal contracting perspective, and sometimes it's hard to get a comprehensive view. We talk about each of these new initiatives as they come out, but seldom do we go back kind of string them all together and say, when you do that, what's the combined effect? You've just written a new blog and you say the rules of federal contracting have essentially been rewritten. When you think back over this last 18 months, what are you seeing that causes you to say that?
Well, I see a lot of change, particularly in the small business community, with CMMC being mandatory and it being rather pricey. I see changes in small business set-asides. I see a new form of contract that is not in the FAR called the fixed price. If you spend more money, you don't get a change to increase the cost, but if you don't use the hours in the contract that are specified, you lose money.
Let's take that fixed price one first and dig into these sort of in order. Profit tied to performance. Who's really carrying the risk under this new model?
Well, the contractor. Usually you think of fixed price contracts. If you bid them correctly, that's safe. I can monitor my profit. I know how many hours it took when I put my bid together. Well, now, and I just heard from a client that's doing work at the IRS who said it is mandatory now at the IRS, and it's going to be mandatory in other agencies, that, first of all, fixed price is mandatory. It's the default choice of contract now by this administration. Then what's unique in these fixed price contracts is they have hours. And that's not all. So you have to meet the hours that are specified. So if it says 19-20 hours, you have to meet those hours, and you have to prove it. And you have to supply time cards. One agency wanted payroll information, and the government will not pay a contractor unless they have provided all that data.
How is that going to change the behavior from the contractor's side?
Well, contractors are very concerned now about, first of all, the extra costs that they didn't anticipate and having to supply all these payroll records in order to get paid, and the fact that some of them on a fixed price contract, particularly small businesses, were not monitoring time entry. People were just putting down time, 8 hours or whatever, and if they worked overtime, it didn't really matter. It was just a straight 8. Well, now they have to carefully monitor time. They have to ensure that they meet that goal of hours, and they have to have extra accounting people to supply all the documentation that is required now, and you have to match the time cards to the invoice. So it's a very detailed invoice. It's not just a fixed price. That if I bid a fixed price contract and said it's going to cost you $500,000 a month for IT services, no. That is over and done with.
The presumption of going to a fixed price structure is that it would reduce costs to the government, don't you think? It sounds like you're saying that there's going to be a lot more costs on the contractor side, and they're going to price those in.
That's a really interesting comment. The government has an additional level of monitoring now to ensure that the contractor is supplying all the hours stated in the fixed price contract.
So it's more cost on both sides.
Correct. With fewer government people to manage this new requirement.
I'm speaking with Barbara Kinosky. She's the managing partner of Center Law and Consulting. Barbara, you also mentioned CMMC, that it's not just a cybersecurity requirement anymore. It's really becoming table stakes. minimum level of entry. How is that reshaping who can actually compete for federal work? And especially what impact is that having in the small business community?
It's having a lot of impact in the small business community. I do a monthly, I call it Zoom radio because I take callers, and I learn a lot from doing it. And we usually talk about general government contracting issues, but once we were talking about specific CMMC. And I had a lot of comments from particularly small businesses that were saying that the cost is prohibitive for them for level 2. Level 1 is a self-certification. Level 2, you have to be certified. And what is the government doing? Well, no one got in trouble for over-requiring. So the government is putting in CMMC 2 when in fact really 1 would be okay because the contractors are not accessing the type of information that is meant to be protected. So if you want to bid on a level 2, you're going to have to be level 2 before you even submit the bid because it's going to take a while to do so. So it's, and I think, a bit of a bar to entry now for small businesses.
What else are you hearing from small businesses? I mean, we're noticing changes in set-aside rules, changes to preference. When you put those all together, what are you hearing from the small business system?
Well, interesting. I'm hearing a lot from ANCs who are very concerned because they are not getting the ANC model is unique. It's under the 8A program, the Small Business Regulations, the Alaska Native Corporations, and they're very concerned that they are not going to be able to start new small businesses under the program. Also, I'm hearing from the 8A community that is saying there have only been a couple of 8A certified in the last year. So the 8A certification process is not proceeding of having new entrants become 8As. And in the beginning of this year, the government also terminated a lot of 8As from the program because they asked them to supply 3 years of records during the holiday season in December. And a lot of them couldn't comply, and they were removed from the program.
What impact do you think that has then on the federal contracting ecosystem? I mean, there's a lot fewer folks to participate.
Definitely. And at Center Law, we also have federal contracts, and I went through the arduous process of getting a women-owned certification through at the time was the new portal at SBA, which was extraordinarily glitchy. I got locked out so many times. So I finally conquered it now to see that there's legislation in both the Senate and the House to eliminate the women-owned program.
So what's your plan of attack there?
Well, we will remain a small business, though the women-owned set-asides are just minuscule compared to the whole federal budget. I think what the community that's going to be mostly impacted is the 8A program along with the Alaska Native Corporations.
One of the other changes here that you cite in your recent article is the new AI rules that go beyond procurement and into data ownership. What does this change for companies who are trying to build and offer those tools to the government?
There's quite a bit there. It's going to provide for the government another area that they have to regulate in another area of cost for the contractor because there's significant obligations on the contractor that are providing any 8A solutions to the federal government. The government is going to get full ownership of data inputs and outputs and a ban on using government data to train commercial models. And then on top of all of that, there's a cybersecurity reporting requirement of 72 hours.
When you put all of these together, more reporting requirements, more accountability, more audits, more cost, what is the signal that the contracting community is taking away from all of these changes?
The contracting community feels like it is being punished for maybe a few bad actors in the community, and I would say those occurred probably during the COVID loans and got a lot of publicity. But the government contracting community overall isn't overloaded with waste, fraud, and abuse. There's very, very few of those bad actors, and they're feeling like they are getting punished for anybody else that has committed some type of waste, fraud, or abuse. And the cost is increasing on the government contracting community, but the profit margins are decreasing.
The Trump administration's talked particularly about wanting to speed acquisition, to bring more contractors into the federal contract business. If you were a contracting officer, would you see these rules as helping you actually achieve those objectives?
No, I wouldn't. In fact, I believe now with all the layoffs in the government, and I believe I saw more a week ago, there are fewer contracting officers, particularly at GSA. It's very difficult now to get a schedule modified, to get any adds or deletes. I'm seeing in the industry right now that if you email a contracting officer and you don't hear back for a couple weeks, you don't know if that person has been terminated. You don't know if they left. There's no out of office email. You're in this wandering around in the desert trying to find somebody else whose email you may have to contact them. So it's a really difficult environment, and I do believe on both sides the government is now having more requirements to monitor with fewer people to do so. And I would also say fewer qualified people to do so, because a whole level of extraordinarily qualified people that I could count on to get an answer from are no longer in the government.
We're talking about all of these changes just over the last 18 months. When you look into your crystal ball, what are you projecting for the next 24 to 36?
Oh, that is an excellent question. I don't know if I have the answer to that, but I would say fewer small businesses. I'm seeing goals in small business subcontracting plans reduced. And that sometimes is the entry point for small businesses to get into the government, because there's a FAR rule that if you are a subcontractor in a small business plan, that you can ask the prime for past performance and get that past performance and use it to leverage your company to become a prime contractor. So I see a lot of those protections and controls for small businesses being eliminated or not really paid attention to. And I feel like there was a time in the government when they felt they needed more vendors to diversify, particularly in the shipbuilding industry. And now I think we're getting to that same crisis point where you're going to have fewer companies offering services, and you're going to be highly dependent on the few.
Barbara Kinosky is the managing partner of Center Law and Consulting. Barbara, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.